Have you ever thought about what would happen if the world collapsed? What if nuclear hellfire rained down on us? Or an EMP cripples the world? Or fresh water runs out? What if society collapsed? What do you think the world would look like 100 years from now? How would society regress? How would it progress? How would the new world view our old one? I often like to think about apocalyptic scenarios. I'm a bit of a prepper myself. I love to imagine and just sort of think what a new world built on the ruins of our old one would look like. Well, good thing there is a Crusader Kings 3 mod that tackles that question in a rather unique and interesting way. If you're familiar with the modding scene, or hell, you probably read the title, you already know what I'm going to talk about. After the End is a mod that takes place in North and South America 600 years after the end of the world. The world is recognizable and new at the same time. In the New England and Washington, D.C. area, a new religion has risen, one based off of America of old. They worship the Founding Fathers and Constitution. Now, this is one of the most what I find to be supremely interesting and realistic concepts included in this mod. If you were just spawned in Washington, D.C. right now, no context, and saw all the monuments, you might think that we worship the Founding Fathers in America. Which, a lot of Americans do to a certain extent. I have a poster of Thomas Jefferson in my room and a copy of the Declaration of Independence hanging on my wall. Even a lot of the language that is used at the memorials evokes religious thought. I'm going to read to you what it says at the Lincoln Memorial. In this temple, as in the hearts of the people for whom he saved the Union, the memory of Abraham Lincoln is enshrined forever. Did you catch that? It's not very hidden. It says in this temple. That's right, temple. What do you think people do at temples? You worship. I think this mod expertly pokes fun at American exceptionalism and how we view our founding fathers. Within this new American religion, there's even different branches that venerate different founding fathers and American ideals. There are the Children of Liberty, who believe that liberty and freedom is the highest American ideal to strive towards. There are the Yeomans, who believe that Thomas Jefferson was the greatest founding father and that his vision of a confederation of independent realms is what Americanists should strive towards. And there's also a couple others, all who are united in a love for the American gods. There are also a lot of other people who worship things from an era they're not from, like the industrialists who live into what we refer to today as the Rust Belt or the Midwest. They worship the industrial titan and magnates of yesteryear, like Rockefeller. To us, what are regulations and rules that we have to follow to safely work in a warehouse or factory are sacred texts to them that must be followed in every facet of life. So much like the Mechanicus in Warhammer 40k, where they work with technology but don't really understand it, and to them they use arcane magic rituals to fix things, but in real life it's more the equivalent of follow a troubleshooting guide to fix computers. That's how they view our current rules and regulations that we follow, just because, it's the safe thing to do, but to them it is a religious matter. Christianity is also still around in its many different forms, and even some new ones. Much of the South is made up of the Holy Columbian Commonwealth, which is a bit of a stand-in for the Holy Roman Empire. In the Holy Columbian Commonwealth, they hold firm to the old ideals of the American South by following God and being kind and chivalrous, just like the Southern Knights they've heard stories of and venerate. There's also the Great Kingdom of Utah, where Mormons still rule and spread their form of Christianity. They are the last redoubt of Christianity on the West Coast. Of course, it's sort of a lot like Fallout. Things get real wacky on the West Coast since there is a mixing of American, Native American, and Mexican culture, all in one area. California is a great empire, but one on the decline. It's more akin to the Byzantine Empire, a powerful kingdom that now teeters towards collapse. There's even a religion on the West Coast that's centered around the Burning Man festival, which in-game and real life is all about counterculture, not conforming to what the rest of society wants. It's about self-love and expression. But in this messed up world, they take it a step farther by burning those who conform and submit to their own egos in a wooden effigy of the Burning Man. There's also still Catholicism, but it's morphed a little bit, as of course the Pope lives in Europe, Pretty hard to get news from the Pope when you can't talk to him anymore. There's also a lot of, I'll say, new old religions, like people returning to what their ancestors believed in, like Native American animism and other religions like that, more so worshiping nature. I think this mod is really great and powerful because it twists our current world into something foreign and unknown. Real-world locations are now wonders, like Disneyland in Florida. It is a valuable place to own and conquer because it's an actual castle built into what is swamplands. If you were, had no clue what Disneyland was and you were just dropped there hundreds of years after the fact, you would think that a great and powerful kingdom lived there. Not that it was just something that a bunch of tourists went to and was an amusement park. New York City is still one of the biggest and most advanced hubs in the entire world. While nowhere near its pre-collapse state, it's still standing and very valuable. Of course, a lot of people live there right now, and even hundreds of years after the fact, a lot of people still live there. Of course, I've been talking a lot about the event, or after the fact, but what actually did cause the world to collapse? Well, in-game, nobody knows. Obviously, there are a lot of ideas and theories, even, within the meta sense of it, within the community. A lot of people have different thoughts, and honestly, the point of this is to not really know. I honestly think, along with a lot of other people, think that Y2K happened, which then led to civil and societal collapse, and then maybe a couple of nukes or something else were thrown in there. Obviously, I do think the mystery aspect adds a little bit to it because you can roleplay whatever you want, and obviously, to a lot of people living in this world, it doesn't really matter why the world ended. All you need to know is that it did. The world of After the End is so rich and well thought out. I mean, it's at the very least interesting. I'm not going to comment on how realistic all of this would be because it's impossible to know, but I think the dev team certainly took the world in an interesting and bold destination. Now, this is still Crusader Kings 3, but it's a whole new world to explore and conquer. Whether that's reuniting America or conquering all of South America as the Brazilian Empire, there is a lot to do and see. There are also a lot of differences from the main game since we are now in a completely different world. Like a lot of cultures starting out with equal inheritance. Now, you don't need to pray that you or your spouse pops out a son. Now it doesn't matter because in the world that a lot of these new people venerate, men and women were equal and were both equally in charge. While obviously there are still a lot of issues today, I'm not going to get into that too much, we do live in a rather progressive world, especially compared to medieval Europe. And that's the world that these new people now worship and want to go back to. So of course, some of our more modern and progressive ideas are still around. Now, if you watch some of my other videos on Crusader Kings 3, you'll know that I think the game has some issues, mostly around how everything feels the same and there's not too much difference no matter where you play. I think this mod, it still somewhat suffers from that. It is of course still just Crusader Kings 3 with a new coat of paint on it. But I think it feels a lot more enjoyable and engaging because, well, it's a new world to explore and get lost in. And I think all of the new religions and cultures let you roleplay easier. I think it really elevates the entire Crusader Kings experience. I mean, honestly, After the End isn't just a mod. I think it's an imaginative. It takes the familiar world we live in and it flips it on its head. And it asks, what happens when our monuments, myths, and cultures become the foundations for new kingdoms, new gods, new empires, and new cultures to emerge? I mean, it still does have some of the gameplay quirks of base Crusader Kings 3. But what makes it special is how it makes every campaign feel fresh. It encourages you to step into these weird, wild kingdoms and cultures and religions and really roleplay. Whether that's as a devout follower of the Founding Fathers, a tech-worshipping Rust cultist, or the ruler of the crumbling Californian Empire. So I think if you're like me and you love thinking about how society might rebuild after a collapse, or if you're just looking for a new way to experience Crusader Kings 3, then After the End is absolutely worth diving into. So, what faction would you lead into the ashes of America? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and please always remember that Jesus loves you.